So good morning, everyone. My name's Rachna. I'm the CEO at the University of Melbourne Graduate Student Association. And a warm welcome to our participants today. We have all our participants who were enthusiastically registered for the first day of celebration of the International Women's Day. So to all the women and all the folks of our community who support women in our community, happy International Women's Day. And it's really good to have an International Women's Day. See all the bright smiles of our and I definitely understand from the enthusiasm, we have lots of people today who've joined together to celebrate this day. So before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. We are still in the we're in the still process of return to campus phase. So I'm actually on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations. And I'd like to acknowledge all the respected elders in the different lands of our country from where you are, and some of you from overseas. So I'd like to pay my respect to the past, present, and the emerging leaders. I'd also like to, on this day, as International Women's Day, acknowledge the contributions, the sufferings, and the trauma of our First Nation people, on the women particularly in the community. It's, I salute their resistance, and I want to acknowledge their contribution to this land and the people of this land. So. It's a real wonderful day to talk about International Women's Day. And I thought I'm very, very lucky today to have three astounding women who have been who are a part of the GSA Council and who have been a part of the GSA Council who've put up their hand to be a part of this panel. The panel discussion is really to gather from their experiences to help us think about the issues, to celebrate the achievements, and also to think what International Women's Day means. So before I commence, I'd like to actually welcome Afsaneh Seifinaji, who is our GSA International Officer. She is a second-year PhD student, and she is at the Faculty of Arts of School of Politics and International Relations. So she's a peace activist and focuses and has been a strong women empowerment advocate. And her experience is not only in Australia, she's done a lot of work overseas in the UN Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. And she has also been a women empowerment mentor with the Creative Girls Organization in Africa. So wonderful to have you on board, Afsaneh. So the second panelist I have is Isadora Reynolds, who is a very active GSA grad group member from many years, but she is currently our LGBTIQ officer at GSA. She's a PhD student with the School of Language and Linguistics. She's been a lecturer of linguistics and a firm advocate for gender and for gender diversity issues, not only back in her home country, but also during her life as a university student. So she's been working in the past years with Women's Collective and independent news sources to be quite vocal about policies about sexual education in schools, people getting informed about reproductive rights and trans issues. So she's specifically very focused on raising awareness about the importance of gender neutral and non-binary language in the fight of inclusion of trans people. I have Lubna Meempatta, who is also a PhD student in the Faculty of Science or Engineering. And I think she would love to be recognized as a proud mother of two beautiful children, 2 and 7 years old. She's the president of the graduate groups of student parents. She's been a strong advocate for advocating for women who are graduates and who have multiple roles as a parent. Lubna has also, in her role as a GSA counsel, ensured activities and policies, as well as the work undertaken at GSA in the period of her tenure, focused on ensuring that the issues of gender inclusion, gender diversity has been considered seriously in all the work that we've done. So for those people who are participating today, who are about 34 and of you, you are in for a good discussion. So I thought before we go to panel questions, it's really important to think about what is the value that drives International Women's Day. And really, fortunately for us, the experience of being a woman is, thank God, not the same. It's not homogeneous. It's so diverse. And it means different things to different people. It means different things to different people at different stages of our life as women. But all of us today are really focused on the issue of equality and ensuring that any small achievements is considered as a celebration. Now, I often think, isn't it sad in one way that after so many years in life, we still have to have a day where we have to focus on actually the historical oppression and the inequality that women have experienced through the history of mankind. But I think in one way, it's very well documented, and I'm not going to spend my time today talking about what the history books say about inequality, but I actually am here to celebrate and hear about the contributions of our panelists and the other women in our community and globally who've actually made it a day where we work together for hope and for action. And the action is, the movement itself is the International Women's Day. It was kind of started in early 1900, and in 1911 is when it got the first recognition of globally calling it as an International Women's Day. And for GSA, the values that closely align with the International Women's Day is really the importance of collaboration. Women never get importance unless the society and the community, men and women, work together in the spirit of collaboration and equality. It's about respect. Respect works, the underlining work of GSA, to accept every individual, their diversity with respect and dignity, be empathetic, have hope, and also to understand that we continue to focus on justice. So I felt that today when we're sitting here, the aim is to listen to our panelists and understand their views, but each of the views and values that you hold as a participant is equally important, however different it may be from our panelists or what GSA thinks. This is one space where actually each one of us, because we believe in a gender neutral policy, that we have the individualistic view and we can adhere to those views, and that's very important to us. So I'm going to ask each of our panel members to express their views. Please feel free to put your comments or questions in the chat. And as usual, people who have joined us today, excluding the staff members and council members, if you participate and you are a member of, agree to participate in our evaluation, which is the most important thing at the end of the session, we will be sending you a small token of appreciation at the end of this session. So I'm not luring you to stay here because of that, but I must say it is an attractive proposition for you to be participating in this session. So I may start off clearly with Isadora. And Isadora, and I then moving on to Lubna and Afsaneh. The question I had was, like, in your experience, you know, as a woman, not as a student or a GSA officer, but just as a woman, what are some of the issues and challenges you've had to face, you know, in your workplace or in your university or anywhere? Give us an example where gender was a factor underlining your experience. It could be a positive experience or it could be a negative experience. It would be lovely to hear from you. Over to you, Isadora.
Let's start with the bad experiences. Just for every one of us to see if we can empathize with these situations. And I am unfortunately going to say that many of us will probably have experienced exactly what I'm describing, which is, I think the worst part of the experiences as a woman when it comes to any sort of harassment is the normalization and the absolute inability to tell apart what things are or aren't appropriate, things you should or shouldn't be tolerating. And just that time that it takes to reflect upon, this is not something that I as a human being should be just tolerating because of my job. When we are in positions of power imbalance, when your employer has the opportunity to make or break your career, and you're in situations that are comfortable to you, you normalize and you put yourself in this level that is beneath the other person. You become vulnerable, and whatever you're thrown at, in any case, I'm pretty sure some of you have experienced particularly either sexual harassment or have been approached in ways that shouldn't be. But because in your mind, it is so normalized that you belong somewhere that is inferior to someone else, you do not fight for anything. You just go along, tolerate what is given to you. And it takes such a long time and such a network of support to actually start looking at this from a different angle. And that would be the good part. It has been amazing how in the past 5 years, or at least in the context where I used to work in, sorority has actually become the rule rather than the exception. Every time one of us has experienced either sexual harassment or wants to share something about their past, they're all there for you. We have come so far in terms of now becoming a sisterhood as we should have always been. And at least I have seen it so notoriously in the past years, and I can't be happier about how much we're turning into sisters. And sorority is one of the ways we get together as women and help each other. And now we hear each other. Now we know it's not normal.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Isadora. I mean, it's such an important message that you're giving to people, that your experience is that, you know, as a young person or as a woman, that this is where this is how the society is, and this is what I have to tolerate. And I think we've made progress, but your experience has been, that has been quite an underlining factor for you. What about you, Lubna, your experience with, you know, your positive or negative or whatever comment you had about this issue?
Hi, Rachna. Thank you, GSA, for giving me this opportunity. I'll actually focus on one issue that I faced growing up as a girl child, especially from a patriarchal society. So many of you in Australian context may not be able to relate to what I'm saying, but yeah, some of the international students, if you are from, especially from South Asian part, you can definitely relate to me. We have a system called dowry where girls' parents pay a gold or good sum of money to the prospective groom during the marriage. So as soon as a girl child is born, their parents start saving money for their marriage. So their education is actually inadvertently getting lower priority than marriage. So I remember growing up, most of the discussions around me was regarding my marriage. So you have to learn cooking so that since you are going to a new house, you will not be in a trouble. And they will not view us studying too much. It's like that will be a trouble to find a groom. Like you will not be able to find a matching grooms who cannot. So then we'll have to pay more dowry to find an educated person. So and you have to have a certain fair complexion so that you will not find trouble in during marriage to find a proper person. Everything, most of the discussions growing up were around the marriage, not around education. So I always thought like, yeah, how would it be if I was a boy? So it would have been, the experience would have been so much different. So it's like we had growing up throughout the discussion. Mostly it's around marriage. It's really frustrating but we wouldn't realize when we were inside that bubble. So when we go out for higher education, when we are outside of that, when we think back, it's like it was not a good experience. Actually, it was most of the girl friends I have like experienced the similar problems. Actually, it's related to the marriage. Everything's like, but if we are like delay your marriage, it's like it's considered as a failure rather than so in your career or anything. So as opposed to a similar, if I'm a male child, my experience, I'll get all the support in the world to advance in my career, in studies, everything. But if you're a girl, you have to go through so many barriers to reach where you are. I remember actually my mom was talking to me, if you actually wanted to study, go for higher education, you have to be the best and get scholarship. Yeah. To have like a lot of dowry for marriage and studies. So you have to choose either. So before being 18, actually, I didn't really want to be married at 18. So I have to be the best and study. So not everyone can do that. So it's a big issue. We are actually progressing a lot from that, but still there's still a lot to go. Many of you may not be able to relate to, but at least few international students who are similar to my background definitely can relate to this. So that's the issue I would like to raise in this panel.
For sharing your personal experience, and I think all of us here today would like to celebrate your achievement. You know, you have definitely, from the experience that I've had interacted with you, you've definitely been a great example that I'm sure many of us have experienced or read in books or about, you know, the understanding that it's a commodity that women have to kind of have X amount of money to kind of be in an eligible age to, you know, get a groom whom you can depend upon. But I think those values are often challenged. In many countries, it's still not challenged. And it's not about whether you're an international student. I think the prevalence of domestic violence and violence against women are basically factors that actually bring in about gender inequality. So I may read a comment which is, I thought, very aptly put here by one of our participants, saying, the sisterhood of women is often compromised by other women trying to fit in with the boys' club. I hope not. And, you know, I understand your sentiments because as you have rightly put, sometimes to survive, you know, you have to be, you can't celebrate in certain societies or certain workplaces. If you act like a boy or if you can do what boys can do, you're considered to be one-up. But I guess this is a good opportunity for us to explore that. So thank you for the questions that are coming, and I will get to the questions, but I may ask Afsaneh too, another example, short example, where you as a woman, maybe even at a workplace or where you've had an experience where you felt you being a woman has been a factor that you've experienced either a positive experience or a negative experience?
Thank you so much, Rachna, for also giving me this opportunity to talk about my own experience. I think answering this question is actually quite easy for all women because we all have different experiences. For me, it starts with a personal experience in my house between my own family members. I remember when I was really young and I was trying to find a job. I really wanted to be a journalist, but my family were always right. My mom always wanted me to be a teacher because that's coming from the feeling of a sustainable job that exposed you to the least amount of danger in their own opinion. But also they were like, but being a journalist, you will be a mom or you will be a wife soon, so you have to be mindful about choosing a job that you have to compromise, and are you sure that as a mother or as a wife you will be able to pursue this job? And also the same thing happened when I was working at my workplace. While I became a journalist and I used to write the most controversial reports, my editor refrained from sending me to missions in other cities, and always like boys or guys in workplace who had less experience than me were the ones sending out. And I was, and at the same time, unfortunately, we were getting paid less and we were getting less incentives. And when we were raising this problem, they were like, you have to understand the situation you put us in. These people are going to run the family. This is why we had the same education, even better education. We had more experience, but still we were getting paid less, or we were getting less incentives, or we were the ones sitting aside. So I believe this stereotyping, this underestimation of my abilities, and not having the full belief that I can take care of myself or I can handle challenging situations. These situations were always haunting me my whole life and holding me back. And these personal experiences are, I'm sure all of the women here have different stories of same negative experiences.
Thank you so much, Afsaneh. There's a good comment which has come, which is quite related to what you're saying. First of all, a good acknowledgement for Lubna from our panel participants. Thank you for sharing. And, I'm sure people have experienced growing up as a girl child, the palming off the child to a man and keeping them safe is one of the goals of a parent, and people have similar experience. But I think another one which I thought was very relevant to talk about is women face judgmental remarks after childbirth. And when they return back to work, there's always this question of, will they have the capacity to do this work? And people actually understanding, how are you going to be able to manage the ability to, if people can just wait, the people on the panel, for me to wait to go through it before you change the question into answer, because I think it may be just a bit helpful for me to read the question. So I think one of the members in the panel has raised this very important issue about people feeling discriminated after childbirth when they return back to the workforce. And I think, I'm sure Lubna could comment on that, or anybody else, but I can probably say to you that it's a common discrimination that is experienced not only by women still in Australia, but also overseas, about people who hire kind of worry that, people, or you may be going to have a child, or you have school-going children. And one, it's also a recognition that in the modern days, men and women play quite an equal part in parenting. And it's important to acknowledge that. Why don't we think about dads having, or male parents who may need to take time off to look after their children? But when it's women, I've personally heard it where people would say, so will you be needing holidays during school holidays? Or, how will you attend these meetings after work? it's really important for us to educate ourselves that there are really important laws that are there in this country that parents or anyone who's discriminated at the workplace because of their gender, race, or their responsibility, there are laws that kind of support us. And I think the way of tackling them is, when you ask how do you tackle them, the way to tackle them is to educate ourselves, to seek support, to address them, because it's often very scary trying to do it on your own. I don't know, I've always found it scary to take up all these things on my own. So organizations like AMSU and GSA can give you proper referrals, but that's very important. But I may just take a quick comment from Lubna. I'm sure, there's been times where you felt particularly discriminated as being a mom, and what kind of strategies have you used to be, to support yourself to overcome these kind of barriers where it's your gender or it's your responsibility as a parent, and what have you kind of used? Could you give some insight to that, Lubna?
Actually, I acknowledge I'm experiencing being a mom of young children. It's a really big struggle I'm still going through. We have to have a lot of discussion in the workplace and acceptance from our peers. And this is actually, this is a reality when we are raising kids. Parents have to take role. We cannot take that lightly, and this is a balancing act actually between family and workplace. And when I remember when Rachna introduced the topic of like celebrating the achievements, so I was actually wondering with the word achievement actually, so what do we mean that? So when we compare, for a woman who is doing all the house, most of the women, not there are exceptions. There are supports in some families, but I'm talking in a general sense. When we are doing all the household works and taking care of the kids and coming to work after all, leaving all this and coming to the work, and with that limited time, we are physically and mentally exhausted. So when we compare our outcome of the work with our peers who doesn't have to go through all these, obviously, actually, we may not be able to provide the similar quality outcome to our peers who doesn't have to go through all this. So there should be an understanding and wide discussions around this, and employees should be educated, and even supervisors for PhD students. I have my close friend, she always experienced comments from her supervisors comparing her research output with other students who can work till 10 o'clock in the night and produce results. So definitely that's not comparable. So we have to actually stop comparing the work with other, focusing on the achievement, how to define that achievement. That's actually we have to have work on that more, and like celebrate whatever small achievements we are actually what we have defined. So in the workplace, have more discussions, and including women. And one thing I always experienced when I was working is like all the team activities will be in the night, so that obviously I cannot participate. So taking the family's time, so instead of doing this in night, you do it in the day actually for the lunch, so that I can attend. So it's like there should be a more awareness in the workplace. And when we talk more, so we will find someone else who is also in the same experience. So we need to have more discussion rather than waiting just for the International Women's Day. It has to happen throughout the year and throughout the day. So that's my take on this. Yeah, I'm still struggling, so I acknowledge.
We all are, I think. Yeah. I think it's a very good example, and I think Lubna touched on it beautifully, and I make it Isadora to also give us a challenge, is that achievement for anybody should be what you define as. So, you may have come across your grandparents or other women in the community or overseas or in developing countries or people. It's not about a degree that you hold. We definitely value and we celebrate your achievements. But achievement is those milestones that at the end of the day, a mom or is able to kind of, manage the life balance between the work and their personal requirements. Being able to articulate at a workplace saying these rules don't really actually are not friendly, and being able to advocate for one another. And I think at GSA, I had a couple of comments which I thought would be good for our panel members to hear. Is I once had a direct manager at WorkSafe explain to me and another migrant woman what the rule of the thumb meant. He almost delightfully giggled as he explained that back in the day, men would only whip their wives with sticks as thick as their thumb. So, these are derogatory comments that are still spoken about. We are very proactive at GSA on the use of pronouns so that, there is an understanding that there is gender equity and gender equality addressed even in the use of language. And may I just request, and thank you for sharing and being brave to share that comment, but it's a message that I have for everyone at GSA, that in the current environment, people like us at GSA are here to support you, our council members, our members, and our staff, that, that kind of workplace is not following the rules and that kind of language should not be tolerated. I also acknowledge that doing things on your own is not easy, and it's never been easy. Even for the person who says they're very empowered, to fight these kind of battles are very hard, and often taking the appropriate support and the knowledge to help us address these kind of equality is that first step that you would do to make a change, beginning to the change, and your children or your friends and family will learn from that example. Don't wait for somebody else to do it, because I think the rule of thumb is actually the thumb begins with you and you've got possession of that thumb. So, take it up in the most positive manner that you can. I may get Isadora to share with us a comment about her strategies that you've used at a workplace about ensuring that you are able to address this, and what kind of support or what have you done to make it different for you?
So I think that the strategies back in the day when I was in my early career, I had none whatsoever. So what you did back then when you were in a position where people were either harassing you or mistreating you or discriminating you for being a woman, there was not really anything you could do. I do feel that we are certainly lucky that now that we're moving, most of us are in the age that we're in getting into positions of workplace or PhDs down the university or any degree that we're following, that it just aligned with an international movement towards equality. I think we're a little bit lucky in that sense, that the strategies are being placed for us. The workplace is changing. The way government looks at discrimination is changing. So I think that one way in which I have approached this now is actually making use of these networks that are available, actually connecting with other people that, just like Rachna was saying right now, connecting with those people that actually know how to manage these situations, the people that have the experience, the hotlines you can call, the legal assessment you could get at university. So what I would recommend to anyone, and in my personal experience, it is what should be the best strategy to deal with inequalities in the workplace, is find the people that can actually support you, and you yourself support people when you detect these. If you detect that somebody is mistreating someone else, call it out, make the person become aware of their situation, and move towards eradicating those sorts of behaviors in the workplace and in academia in general as well.
Thank you so much. I thank you for the comments that have been put in, but as just as an organization at GSA, and to ensure this is a public domain, we may be not in a position to maintain your confidentiality, and it's a publicly viewed document. I encourage participants not to put in the names of individuals that you have actually had an experience with, because I probably think it's not the appropriate forum. At GSA, we're here to support you and provide you referrals to kind of address your experience. I'm sorry about the experiences that you've had. And definitely, there are a couple of distressing comments that are coming. I want to make you understand we acknowledge it. We understand how painful that must have been for you. But I think it's important to understand that it is a public domain, and we don't want your name to be put in there, so that it may put you at risk because of defamation or in relation to your name being publicly published. So I had a couple of comments which I thought we could answer in broad. Is one of the people who had an experience with working in a workplace where often when somebody goes on maternity leave, the position becomes redundant, and it quite sad for people, because it is one woman's kind of putting the kind of expectations and lack of understanding that's there. It's very distressing. And second thing is, Victoria has an Equal Opportunity Commission. GSA would be more than happy to give you the contact details. Such kind of issues can be addressed, and the workplace may have reasons for doing it. It may be non-related, but I think it's important to seek help. I would also request students who are in the University of Melbourne to contact AMSU, our Students' Legal Advocacy Service, who can support you in understanding, and whether it's you or whether it's another family who has experienced it, please note that it may be something that you be completely distressed about it, and you need to kind of get some resolution about it. It's really, really important that you take the appropriate legal support, and there are laws that are there in Australia that prevents people from being discriminated at a workplace because they need to access maternity leave or time off from taking leave. It's not only at a workplace, it's also applicable for you as a student, and particularly for PhD students. Please note that it's a long tenure of your course. There's time when you will have time to take maternity leave. You may need provisional leave, and the university has good policies to support you in that. So make yourself aware about that. So Afsaneh, just a question to you. Can you share with us an experience where you did talk about, I've seen you've worked in places where you've empowered. What kind of strategies do you recommend to people who are listening to you on this panel about how they can be supported?
Yeah, thank you so much, Rachna, for that question. I think in my experience, I think as Isadora and also Lubna mentioned very well, but usually when we get suppressed, some people, maybe some women, feel that they are marginalized and they don't want to talk about it, or they feel that they don't have the energy to fight against this discrimination. But a strategy that I was trying to use since I was facing the situation since childhood, for me, was to use this discriminative behaviors as an stimulant to show that I am capable and I have the ability, to show that I am I can be in the situations that they feel that I'm not good enough or I'm not capable of handling it, and show that I am I am capable of handling those situations. But for instance, while my parents were really worried of me exposing to dangerous situations, I put myself out there. I realized that they are stressed, and I used to talk to them. I used to have a dialogue and talking about myself and my abilities. And after that, those achievements at workplace, they started to have more belief in me. They started to realize that I am empowered enough and I am able to handle the situations. But on the other hand, I think in workplace, awareness raising is also very important, as you mentioned as well, because at work, maybe I was the person, you know, a lot of women, our co-workers, maybe don't want to talk about maybe the experience of sexual harassment or their experience of discrimination or getting paid less. But what strategy that I did was raising awareness, talking about it in our monthly meeting, telling that I feel that I am not treated equally as men in this office, or I feel that it is not fair that those people are getting more incentives at the end of the month while we are working the same hours, not to mention that we might more work overtime as well. So maybe I was not the favorite employee at the office. Maybe they felt that I am too confident or bold to think that what I had in my mind, but for sure I was the person addressing the issues of other women in the workplace as well. So I believe this, using our experience for as challenging ourselves to work more, and also awareness raising, are very important strategies to address these issues that I experienced in my life.
Thank you so much, Afsaneh. That I think raising awareness is important, because there's a good comment from one of our members who is attending is, what would you say to women who are struggling with asserting themselves in a workplace, particularly those who are early in their career path? I think we've all experienced that when we start our career, or when we start studying, or when we, it's like your first day at school, your first day at uni, it's or even you kind of want to compromise and say you want to fit in, that is like Isadora used a very good word, which was really, this is normal. I have to be just like everyone else. And I think the important thing in career path is there's a fine line between being assertive. And there's a comment here about somebody who experienced, feeling very upset and rude, treated very badly by, whether it's a migrant CEO or any other CEO, and, felt that behavior like this comes from women because they've had patriarchal kind of experience, that being a leader is about actually shouting and screaming and putting the fear out of hell on people that is there. So as I said, I think it's important that I'll answer both the questions and I'll get each one of you to comment, is that when you start in your career path, being assertive and knowing your rights is like how you know your job. Like, I think as PhD students or students, knowing what your course content is, understanding what your assignment is, what you understand by ethics, what do you understand by plagiarism, how you're very good at all that. And we are all good at that, not you all, we are all good at that. And then what happens is, when it comes to behavior at the workplace, when we look at our bullying policy, or when we look at our respectful work policy, or sexual harassment policy, or parental leave, what do? We go straight down to the signature and put a signature there and send it off, okay? Or when there's training, when you look for training, on research content, on using software, how to make a widget. But when it is about exercising your rights at the workplace, we give less importance to that. My humble opinion, or my humble request to all of you, is knowing your rights at the workplace and knowing your ability of using the mechanism to address the concern in a pathway which is respectful to you and your workplace, is being a good employee and learning your career path. So for example, an example of a CEO or a manager who may be rude. If you want to make a change, if you're able to challenge that behavior, if you're going to raise awareness to that CEO about their behavior and get support for that CEO, that's going to make that change. But saying that that person had a patriarchal experience and everybody has to suffer under them is not good enough. That's just my opinion, but I'm sure people have different opinion, and sometimes we are all, we've been in workplaces where we don't feel very empowered to do that. So any comments from you, Lubna, in relation to, as a leader, what do you think, why do you think we should be assertive, and why should we kind of celebrate the achievements of women at a workplace?
You have actually put, Rachna, we have to be more assertive about our rights. And I was actually think like we should train as part of from organizations to teach employees at the beginning what are the rights are in the workplace, because most of the time we are not aware. So we need to know what are rights and how to approach these situations when we face them. For me, and we need to have a proper communication channels, how to talk with your employer in this regard. I remember actually being a PhD student, how to communicate with my supervisor, how I did in my first year, and now since I'm final year, how I talk with them is completely different. I mean, when I'm at the beginning of my PhD, I always think like it's my problem. I have to ask most of the every time leave whenever my son gets sick, or it's like I tend to overpromise. Actually, I can do that, and at the end I will not be doing it. So it's like I can't. So, but now I'm more open in the communication. I'm at the beginning itself. I said, okay, it's not possible to do this task within this time. So I can't do that. So I tend to talk more and be more open and communicate more, and that actually had a very positive impact on my mental health actually. So how I work on because they know actually. So sometimes your employer may not be aware actually how you're struggling behind. So we have to talk, and we have to have platform to communicate. So we need to have platform to raise our issues, and rather than, so most of the time, since we have a very higher expectation on women in our society, we think everyone is like that. So having a policy platform to talk and give the proper training to both employers and employees on their rights, that's actually very important. So I would like to use this platform to one example. There are like policy platforms, like university has clear policies on actually how to regarding supervisor-student relationship. So I have experience when I work with GSA families, so I had opportunity to talk with many student parents. So when supervisors are actually not following those policies, so we need to make sure that there are training provided to supervisors or employers on these policies, and making sure like they are aware, and even students should be aware of that. So that's my take on this issue. So yeah, I'm happy to hear from others.
Thank you so much. I did have one of our panel members who have expressed their disappointment at GSA, as well as so that we hadn't supported them in their grade in PhD. And I mean, this is not. I do want to acknowledge that if we haven't responded, I do apologize, and I'd be very happy to be contacted confidentially by you whenever you think it's appropriate, so that we can support you in the relevant matter that we can. So I just wanted to acknowledge this, because I didn't want to say that we're not going to, when we are not done something, we're here for you and we would love to support you. The second thing is that I think there was a question which is really very well spoken about. Within the fight of equality, there are different layers and kinds of oppression. And I have a question for my fellow sisters on this panel. How do we address intersectionality intersectionality in fighting for equality in a way that leads to appreciating our diversity and no one feels insecure or threatened. I may put that to Afsaneh or Isadora. The question is really, we talk about we talk about inclusiveness and the intersectionality of how we work together. In your view, how can that be done? Would you like to answer that, Isadora or Afsaneh?
Whomever?
Yeah. If you want to go first, Isadora.
Well, this is an issue that it's hard to tackle, but I think what we have to do in the workplace is actually have two sets of eyes. One to look at all people as equals, and one to be able to tell apart the nuances between everyone else. So from an intersectional point of view, all of us have different things that have configured and made us who we are. Some of us might have the background of being immigrant women, but also having the empowerment of actually having an education. And that all comes together to configure who you are. So whenever you're in the workplace, and I think this is specifically very important for mothers in the workplace, you have to be considered as an equal that has the abilities to actually perform her job. But at the same time, you should be afforded some, I wouldn't want to call it special treatment, but some licenses considering your background. A woman in the workplace who is also a mother has a double job, and we know that. And that should be supported. So what I would advocate for is moving towards workplaces that are able to make those distinctions, validating us as individuals with our abilities, and the fact that we have that particular job or are in academia or got to the PhD is because we have the skills to be there. I don't think anybody gets this handed out for free. So the workplace or the situation we're in should validate us, but also have an open eye for what actually makes us different. As a woman, there's certain things you want to talk about, things you don't want to be exposed to. As an immigrant, you will have an experience where you would not be very comfortable if in your workplace you are hear a couple of racist jokes, or you hear somebody comment on how we're here to take your jobs or something like that. So just being aware of the people who work with you, being aware what makes them them, and try to respect the nuances between people while treating them as equals. It's a hard thing to do, but I think that's what, in this day and age, we're moving towards.
Afsaneh, I may get you to respond as an international student. I'm sure you may have experienced that, where when you're trying to get meaningful employment, I call it meaningful employment because even sometimes getting work placements on honorarium are difficult. What is your experience of how do we work within this group as a totality, and it's not one issue and it's somebody else's problem?
Well, actually, as a person who immigrated to another country with a whole different culture, and being with a lot of people from different nationality and in a diverse workplace, I think it's very important to be mindful, and also to get the proper training, or to get or to train ourselves to be mindful regarding the places that we are in, to have the proper respect to the people, to the cultures of people, or to their even or gender, sexual orientation, and to be aware that people might get offended by the comments when we are trying to maybe talk about their culture, or when we are asking questions about their religions. We should be really mindful about how to articulate our questions or our jokes or our comments, and how to be sensitive regarding working in a diverse working place. And I think it's very important it's very important also to talk about it when we might also get exposed to these questions. For example, I'm coming from Iran, I'm coming from the Middle East, and unfortunately, even in Australia, when I say that I'm from Iran, I heard the comments like, oh, so how is the war in your country? And I think it's also very important to be mindful of how to respond, because we might get exposed to comments in the workplace, but while being mindful of how to treat to other people, maybe teaching them or not teaching them, or maybe like respectfully talking about the fact that it is not okay, it is not proper to ask a person from another country or another part of the world about the how to ask the question or how to put their comments in in an amicable way, in an amicable behavior. So this attitude can also inspire other people to maybe be more mindful about the environment that they're working with people with different religions and different cultures. Maybe this behavior can be a little bit inspiration to other people to be mindful about their own behaviors as well, while being respectful, but talk out loud, but not get offended. Try to amicably teach them how to react.
No, that's such a very good. Thank you so much for sharing that, Afsaneh and Isadora. I think sometimes we feel that we need to know everything, and it's. I think we make these assumptions. I'm sure each one of us have that experience that we're very easy to say Australians are like this, or you're from this particular country, or if you're from this race. And I think it's done inadvertently. And of course, it can cause grief and pain, or because you're a woman, I don't know this. I wouldn't know this because I'm not a woman. These are kind of statements that we would say. I think we would never get it right. And nobody teaches us right from, as Lubna has rightly said, each one of us have an experience. So every time we're learning, we're teaching our children new things, we're learning. And I think often this behavior comes when you fear, when do racism come into a country, or when does oppression come into a country, into our framework of behavior? When do we learn to bully? When do we learn to harass? You kind of ask these questions. As somebody said, it may have been your observation. You may think that's what leadership is about, but I think this ever crusade of reflecting and learning is absolutely important, because I definitely could say every day I struggle to kind of understand, how am I going to ask this difficult question, or how am I going to learn? And I think to plead ignorance and say, I don't know and I want to know, is the best beginning. And I think that itself is always a humble beginning, because I don't think all of us need to assume that we know everything. I may put this question to Lubna. Because
sorry, Rachna, can I very shortly add another thing as well? I think here refraining from generalizing is very, very important. Unfortunately, I hear it all the time, even from educated people, that when they talk, they're like, for example, Australians are blah blah, like Iranians or Middle Easterns, and every time I'm very careful, and I always like try to ask them nicely, like, please be careful, because there are so many different people in a country, or there are so many different types of people, or women are not the same. You can never generalize. And I saw the change between my own friends, that I was telling a joke about like Iranians, but then I was like, I just remember that Afsaneh is really sensitive towards generalizing, and I think I try to be more mindful. This feedback was really valuable for me, and I think if we make it kind of like our mandate to always like to tell people that there are so many different types of people living in a country, or people from one religion are so diverse, it will also help them to be a bit more mindful when they live in a country or they work in a place that there are so many different people from different races, languages, and etc.
Thank you, Afsaneh. That's a very good reminder. And I think I'm not kind of giving this as an excuse, but I think often when you do hear inappropriate thing, just arriving to a conclusion that this person is racist and, you know, coming to the extreme end, make that attempt to understand, is it ignorance? Is it the knowledge that they need? And developing that courage to talk to people about it. I'd like to take a comment from Lubna about particularly the challenges of parents, women particularly, in pursuing a career path. But before I do that, I want to read a couple of comments, which I think you could include in your comments too, is that, you know, often we hear that women always want to have all these privileges, and, you know, people think equal opportunity is, it says, like, I've felt over the past few years, women issues are put down and, you know, often saying, we have not fixed the system. I acknowledge that. And that, you know, women want, they're taking advantage by this, using this word, or, you know, under equal opportunity. They just want special favors. I think Isadora articulated it well. It's not about women. It's about understanding different cohorts and different communities have particular requirements, or not requirements. It's just an additional consideration that needs to be put into factors. And it's really important that when you are talking about equality and equity, that you actually consider the factors. Equity and equality doesn't come unless you consider the different needs of people. So if you give a big spiel about we are equal and, you know, we believe in equality, but hang on, you can't have this because, you know, you're A, B, C, and D. That's not an equality framework. So I think, Lubna, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit before we finish off, really, your experience as a graduate parent, because you've been so vocal and wonderful about it. And what is it that you feel is the crusade that needs to keep going on for parents who are women and who start following their higher education?
Thanks, Rachna. This is a question, actually. The answer is will never end. Actually, there are so many challenges, and it's mostly challenges than opportunities when it comes to student parents. So I asked my fellow student parents the same question, and it's like there were so many answers. And the one thing actually that's mostly reflecting is like how related to the childcare responsibility when your kids are very young. If you don't have any family support, sending them to childcare, it's really costly. And if you're a PhD student, your scholarship is less than the childcare fee. So it's like if you don't have any government benefits, so it's really costly. And on top of that, especially since the childcare cost is so high, so mostly one of the parents are forced to stay at home, and that comes generally, that would be women. So it's like it's really disadvantaging to women. So that's an area that's very crucial, actually. So that's really important to address for us women, since we are roughly 50% of the population. So bringing back for us to have like equal gender balance in the workplace or in the university or anywhere, we need to provide more opportunities. So in that case, we need to have provisions to take especially childcare accessible to families. So that's actually one common theme actually I got from most of my fellow student parents. So but another thing is like the timing of the I remember when I think Isadora or Afsaneh mentioned like this school timings, like it's really do not fit to our work time or work or study time, school ending earlier, so and we may have to leave early, or the school holidays, so that comes due, that doesn't actually match with work or study time requirements. So these things actually, so if we decide to send them to school holiday program, it's actually really expensive. These are more than the domestic student, it affects the international students really adversely, because they are not eligible for many of the government benefits, and some of the scholarship do not actually, most of the scholarship do not provide the child care subsidy, so that actually one of the parent are forced to study home instead of sending the child to the child care. I remember one of my friend who is doing a PhD in medicine, so she's taking care of her 1-year-old at home and doing PhD, so it's like she cannot afford sending her 1-year-old to a child care. I can't imagine actually the amount of time required to be with a young child, because I remember when I went to my second baby, it's like I actually underestimated the amount of time that required for us to parent a young child. It's like it's really time consuming. We need to have 100% time for reading stories or playing
I
and
think
cooking. So
I can see the emotion that is going into it, because it is definitely an acknowledgement that nobody gives you a book about the time
yeah.
and the 101 principles you need to know about parenting, and every day is different. So I think people who haven't been able to participate, Lubna has been played a key role in working with us in the Parents on Campus research. So I'd like you all to go and read that on our website. And Natasha, who is attending this panel, is also continuously talking about childcare. I think it's important as parents. There's a question here in relation to a PhD student who is wanting to get information about maternity leave, and has anyone had, just to let the attendee know, is that please ensure that you do contact GSA, on the info line. We will ensure that even if it's Lubna who can give you some information about, accessing parenting, the maternity leave would be something that we can assist you. If you have problems, you can always go to AMSU, who can support you with your individual support. And as I said, is don't hesitate to ask. And I think we feel that, as a parent or people who need additional needs, the best way to cope is to work around the system, rather than if you're working on equality and equity, then the most important thing is to articulate your needs. And when you articulate your needs, people who don't have the lived experience, or people who may be writing a policy, or who may be deciding about what kind of charges should be put for childcare, or even just, for parents, sometimes having a private space to study had been so difficult during the COVID period of time. And people would say, oh, but we're giving you a table and a desk. And, imagine 3 children at home and having a table and chair where kids could go and run around and hit their head is not going to kind of solve the problem. But I think unless you articulate your needs, you're not going to be able to do that. I encourage you to be a part of the grad group, parents group. It's an amazing, amazing opportunity to meet other parents and talk about the issues and seek help. And seeking help is not because you're distressed. It's actually because sharing is actually a good way of supporting other people in the platform. I'm going to ask Isadora the last question for the panel today. Isadora, we talk about language, we talk about gender lens, and you've been a very articulate, student at the university about understanding about gender equity, which is very, very important. Why do you think it is so important for all of us at the university to consider issues apart from gender equity through a gender lens? Why is gender lens a good topic to have?
Yeah, I think that in the conversation we'll be having about what is equity and how to achieve equity in the workplace, a lot of people have talked about like achieving gender equality when what we should do is exactly what you were mentioning, which is having a gender perspective lens when discussing any problems in the workplace or any, for example, especially when Lubna was saying about being a parent. You have to have a gender perspective lens in the sense that you have to understand that children, for example, need to be taken care of, but the woman behind that childcare is also a person with needs and goals. So looking at each person from the perspective of a caring and empathetic lens is the first step towards achieving empowerment. We have to be able to see people, as I mentioned, with their nuances, and as well as just one more member of society. So the gender lens is not necessarily looking at everything from a feminist point of view, but it's adding an extra perspective to the issues that we have had that were not looked through the right lens. For example, let's go back in time. When we looked at the issue of childcare and women in the workplace, the solution was for women not to enter the workplace. Nowadays, the solution is to find ways in which women can come into the workplace whilst not disregarding the importance of child rearing. To make it a community thing, to make it a very collaborative society where both entering the workplace, trying to achieve your goals, and child rearing, which is essential in society, can all be equally important, and there should be policies that try to make this easier. So the gender lens is just looking at the problems we've had as society, bringing a new perspective on them, and try to solve them thinking about from the point of view of the women who have experienced this, and trying to listen to their experiences, their opinions, are there possible solutions that can actually lead to something new. It's adding an extra eye, an extra perspective to get society to be more inclusive. It's basically just that. It's not making the world super feminist, or it's integrating each individual in the salad bowl facet. I don't know if we're familiar with the difference between the melting pot and the salad bowl. For a lot of people, some societies just try to make everyone as equal as possible, like in a melting pot where everybody turns from different metals into bronze. Well, the salad bowl perspective is having something in complete harmony, which is a salad, which are wonderful, but each of the pieces can be identified on their own. So you can have the harmony of coexisting whilst acknowledging individuality. I don't know if I've made myself clear why we need the gender lens perspective.
Yeah, I think, thank you so much, Isadora. Just to respect the members who have put some questions or comments, is women need to be more involved in superior positions in workplace to get our voice more widely heard and recognized. Absolutely. I would like to give a shout out to the people who run our internship and leadership program, LEAD program at GSA. You know, it is wonderful to have 32 of you who are actually participating again in another LEAD program from different countries, from diverse perspectives. And I think it's just wonderful to, so leadership is not as defined as, you know, what position you hold. It's really about what you bring to the table on your values. The other question I did answer, and that was about, please seek out about your maternity leave, either contact GSA info, or, you know, we will definitely get somebody like Lubna or our GSA families officer or one of our council members to respond to you, or Natasha, who is our senior policy coordinator, would contact you and provide you support about how you go about your maternity leave and where you need to contact. I think there's one very good suggestion about, in Spain, long lunch and siesta breaks as a part of the culture. So there's a part of a workday structure, of 50% of the population was excluded from deciding about working hours. It's not impossible to think about work day and a year being different. That's a good suggestion, and I think we all would like to pursue to have a work-life balance. And I think the last question before we finish is, there's really a very good question which I thought would be good for all the panel members to just say a sentence about it. It's really about this question about the language that we use about work-life balance. You know, we need to have a work-life balance. We need to have a work-life balance. And we could think of all the times we know men have not been asked the same questions. And as I said, you know, you go to a workplace and they see a woman who's pregnant and they would ask, so when's the baby due? I'm so happy for you. And, you know, the employer is really seeking understanding is when the person is going on maternity leave. You know, if it's a male, you don't really ask that person, oh, are you having a baby? Or when are you both having, you know, are you both pregnant? Are you going to have a baby? So I think it happens at a workplace, and, you know, it's a challenge that women have, the additional stress of how do you manage a work-life balance? I may leave my last comment to it, but Isadora, one sentence on why do you think work-life balance is important for men and particularly for women?
Well, once we achieve paid parental leave, we are not going to have this problem anymore. Once men have to leave the workplace when they are pregnant because they are involved in this question shall not be asked again. That is one of the movements towards equality, and to actually make child rearing equitable.
Wonderfully answered. Lubna, your question, you know, about the work-life balance, is that an ongoing struggle for women even till today?
Yes, of course. We get that question like daily basis whenever they know that we have a child, or when we are pregnant. So it's like, yeah, I mean, sometimes people are trying to understand, or in other ways they are trying to judge. So it's really difficult to differentiate what the intention behind the question. So yeah, we need to have like equal men also, like have to have like this similar sort of expectations like women. So I'm not sure when we will reach that stage, but I think we are progressing slowly towards that. I'm hopeful.
Anna, your final comment.
Sorry, Rachna. So while I was checking the participants, and I can see that a large amount of people who are here with us today are international students, and also one of the questions was related to women at the workplace. I just wanted to quickly, I know we don't have much time, but I just wanted
to answer this question just from an international student perspective, because yes, this is really not an international students forum. I particularly just want to acknowledge that I acknowledge it's a difficulty for international students, but our platform is really to talk about women, irrespective whether you're an international student or a parent. So if you can answer that question finally that way, that would be lovely.
Well, yes, totally. Well, regarding work-life balance, I believe it's very important for workplaces to, especially for, as Lubna was saying, the ongoing challenge of women, especially who are bringing up children, 1 or 2 children. I think a very important step in progressing work-life balance is offering kind of like flexible working hours to people, not only women, because it should be like an equal responsibility of both parents, but offering a flexible working hours to people who are struggling to bringing up their children would be like a great progress. I'm not sure when we can be, it's kind of like a utopian world that all workplaces have flexible working hours, but maybe advocating this would be a great progress in that regard.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And so before we finish, we have just wanted to thank the panelists today. And, you know, it's often that requires a lot of courage while they're working, being a parent, being an international student or a domestic student, being a person with additional need, that, you know, making time for such forums and sharing the awareness is absolutely important. So very, very grateful to particularly Lubna, who continues to have interest in GSA and continues to provide the organization the support as a graduate parent advocating for the issue. And Lubna, I think while I was reflecting on your comments, one of the things today we do need to celebrate is those women who have broken those barriers, who have made these significant achievements in their academic field and, you know, taken on the responsibility of a parent as a partner and, you know, excelled in every way and continues to lobby for this issue. Is we salute you and we thank you so much for your time. And Afsaneh and Isadora, I think, Afsaneh, I think your studies and your movement is just the sense of hope that people have, that, you know, the ongoing continuous empowerment for women is, it doesn't start or stop. It's a life cycle and it continues. And Isadora, to bring those perspectives that this is not about a privilege. It's not about giving gender a privilege. It is about acknowledging there is a framework that brings equality in our in our society. So I think, you know, for all the people who have participated today, men and women and our, you know, our transgender community, that, you know, what I'd like to kind of leave you with a message is that today is really about, you know, reflecting back on some of our myths, some of our own experiences, our battles and challenges that we've continued in the history of, you know, our society as being women in our society, the disadvantage, and sometimes in people who make a preference which is not the norm, as we call it. And I do want to acknowledge that. And today is about beginning the celebration rather than it's a day for celebration. It's a beginning of celebration. And I think a little message that I thought was really apt, that I was thinking of what I should say is, a girl in her, she is 17 years old and is coming from a developing country, said to her mom, whom she supports in making a meal, "Why is it that I cook the meal and I support you to make the meal, but I always have the meal after my brothers have finished their meal?" And I think some of us don't relate to that, but some of people may relate that in certain families, women still cook and they clean, and then when everybody in the family have eaten their meal, they sit down to have a meal. And so a girl's child was like, why can't I, who cook the meal, take the preference of having the meal first? But I think there are still people who are asking these questions, and GSA is having this dialogue, is just increasing the awareness. I do want to thank all the staff who put this together, particularly Tavita, Alisuma, Jill Chow, Mani, and Andrew Lee, who have, you know, put in a lot of hard work. Our grad group staff, Chelsea and Suba, for supporting and promoting with that. And the policy officer, Natasha, Abraham, Vipol. And we have 2 new members, Kara and Sean, who've joined us. So a big thank you to all the staff, and of course all the staff at GSA who make it very, very possible for us to do this. I guess I do want to acknowledge the leadership team of GSA, the council members who have taken the courage, apart from being students, to put up their hands and come on to be on the GSA council. And, there is leadership. We are so fortunate that from 15 members, we are going to be an organization that can provide 38 graduate students the opportunity to be involved in the life of this organization's governance. So we look forward to all of you participating in the GSA election, either being standing for the election or electing your representative member. And tomorrow we have a great topic to talk about, which is a continuation of safety at a workplace, which is something that we've been advocating for. So thank you to all of you, and another happy International Women's Day beginning, as I say. Let's not make it the only day, it's a beginning. Thank you so much.